Welcome to the Here Nor There podcast, and I am Shaun, your honorable host. Welcome back. We are delivering a new episode for this week, discussing the subtle art of self-belief. One of my favorite topics, if not the most favorite topic of mine. So I want to start off this episode explaining what discipline is, because with discipline and consistency, when you have discipline and consistency in the three pillars of creation, and that's what I call thought, feeling, and action. When you have discipline and consistency in those three pillars, voila, you have manifestation. That's all that it is, folks. There is a magical element of it, but that magical element is on the external. That's for people who did not go through the day-to-day process of planting the seeds of consistency and discipline. So when it comes to the internal action of self-belief, you can look at the internal, you can look at the day-to-day, the things that nobody saw behind closed doors, and you can add up how you got there. You can add up why you got there. Maybe not every step of the process, but you can see the big picture. But to the person that's on the external who did not see what was behind closed doors, who did not see the day-to-day process of discipline and consistency, it looks like magic. Voila, manifestation. Wow, you just said a couple of affirmations and it happened? Wow. But of course, we didn't see the discipline and consistency that went on behind the scenes to manifest those results. So let's talk about discipline. Let's define what discipline is, because one of my lovely members, we had a conversation about this in our group session last week. One of our lovely members pointed something out to me in something that they said about their definition of discipline. But it got me to think about the word discipline and why people have resistance with that word. And it's for two reasons, the internal and the external definition. Externally, when you say the word discipline, it automatically evokes the feeling of punishment. Whenever discipline is expressed in an external way, that comes in the form of punishment. You broke the rules, so therefore you have to be disciplined. But when you take it inward, the English language is a very, very dynamic thing. When you take that word inward, discipline means maintaining the focus to achieve your goals, removing the impulse and maintaining your focus to reach your goals. External discipline is negative. Internal discipline is positive, and it's the key to life. I just released a YouTube episode about the art of believing in yourself. In fact, the title goes a little something like, if you don't know how to believe in yourself, here's how to do it. What I've discovered in my work over the last several years of coaching clients, of using these principles in my own life and with those that I love, is that self-belief is at the root of all the solutions and all the problems in life. When we discuss this reality creation, which is just a fancier term for self-improvement and personal growth, that is the core of what everything comes from. That is the source of what everything originates from. But how? How do you believe in yourself if you don't know how? If you weren't raised to believe in yourself, to see the unforeseen reality as something that you can manifest, materialize with your own set of skills, with your own set of talents, just with the pure conviction of self-belief and belief within your purpose and your vision. That's why I titled this episode, Be a Student, Not a Follower. What's the deeper meaning of that? I am a person who looks into the deeper meaning of words. When I was a teenager, the thing that I used to hear probably the most in my lifetime back then, and my identity back then, was, it's not that deep, Shaun. It's not that deep. And it is that deep, because our world works on patterns. Human psychology is basically the studying of the patterns of the psyche. So one's intelligence is directly correlated to your ability to recognize patterns. So I notice these patterns in life, the things that we say. I notice the patterns of the people who are successful and the people who achieve success, how they speak about themselves versus the person who doesn't. So let's take that a step further. It's a very fancy sounding title. I know it's probably hitting home for you, but how do you become a student and not a follower? It's a very fine line between the two in 2026. And that how is a very simple word. And that word is action. If you want to complicate it a little bit, how much you take action. That is the difference between a follower and a student. I am always an advocate for becoming a student of the people who have achieved what you're trying to achieve in life. Let's take the pathway of wealth, whether it's in entrepreneurship, whether it's in your career field. Even if you found the perfect career field for you and working for somebody else, working for a larger organization is fulfilling to you. I am an advocate for entrepreneurial success, but also I was a professional for myself for 15 years. And there is a lot of joy that could be found in that, being a part of somebody else's larger vision and being a part of that and contributing to that. So I'll never turn my back on the professional. So this goes for my professionals and my entrepreneurs. Take action. When you find somebody in your reality, in your universe, in your personal and professional life that has what you want, whether it's the title, the accolades, the credentials, the financial ceiling that they've hit, the financial ceiling that they've broken through, study them. Become a student of them, not necessarily a follower. When you look at the language of the Instagrams, the TikToks, things of that nature, you have followers. That's why I somewhat prefer the language of YouTube. I prefer the language of some of the older social media programs because they refer to people as subscribers, friends. Reciprocity is there. You are giving and receiving. You are expanding each other's energy through presence and through the information that you share with each other. But around the early 2010s, the follower was introduced, and that has completely shifted the mindsets of so many people across continents, where people are absorbing the content. They are consuming the content, but they're not taking action on it. They watch the comedians and the comedians evoke a certain laughter in them. They evoke a certain relaxation in them, taking stress away from the everyday life, the everyday things that we go through, the ups and downs. And that's totally fine. The comedians, the entertainers, the musicians, things of that nature. But what about you? What about what you want to accomplish? Who are you following? Who are you studying in that regard? Let's just say you are in the medical field. Are there other doctors, other nurses, other practitioners of the medical arts that you are studying, not just following? One of my favorite people to watch on YouTube is Dr. Berg, and I study what he has to say. And the difference between following him and studying him is simply taking action on the advice and the guidance that he gives and spreading that to other people as well. But when we get into the more artistic endeavors of content creation, one of the comments that I saw in a YouTube video recently that I placed out there was that, hey, Shaun, can you speak on the artistic nature of entrepreneurship? What if I create art? What if I create music? How do I improve my self-belief and my self-concept in those areas? Yeah, you speak about entrepreneurship, you speak about business, you speak about wealth, but what about the art? And my answer is always the same answer, that all of these rules are applicable to whatever you want to apply them to. I'm very proud of my program and the hundreds of lives that has changed so far. But when you join my program, that's how I teach these things. It's a holistic way of looking at things, holistic with a W, not just an H, to where you're looking at the big picture of everything and how all of these patterns fit within each other. And the patterns of transformation, which what we call the law of attraction, these patterns fit within the grooves of whatever you want to apply it to, whether you're an artist, a businessman, a businesswoman, a practitioner of a certain industry, whatever it is that you want to achieve, the same principles of transformation apply to all these areas. So let's break down specifically when it comes to art, because I look at any creative endeavor as art. Especially coming from a web design degree. I was 15 years as a creative director in the web design, in the interactive media arts. It's essentially art. It's art that has a specific function. The function is not to hang on a wall in a museum, even though that is a function, because the function of museum art, of fine art, of abstract art, to tell a certain story about history in order to record what the people thought, felt, and saw at those times. That has a very specific place in society. So even art on a canvas, in a frame, on a wall, holds a function. So whenever you're thinking about art, think about the function that it has. So back to the point that I was making, interactive design is art that has a function. And all interactive art is getting you to buy something. That's essentially what web design is. That is essentially what app design is to deliver something to you, whether you already paid for it or they are trying to get you to pay for something. It is a way to provide value to large amounts of people. So how do you improve your self-belief in that? How do you improve your self-belief in that? If it's art, if it's a more traditional industry, you improve yourself. Your financial aspirations, your career aspirations, your entrepreneurial aspirations are capped at your level of personal development because the base of everything is self-belief. So to invoke this feeling of self-belief, there are going to be two pillars. And pillar one is going to be discipline. Pillar two is going to be consistency. Discipline and consistency will bring about any thought into material form. So let me break this down for you, how we're going to actually start this. We're going to reverse engineer. Instead of me starting out this part of the pod telling you what technique to do, what strategy to evoke within yourself. So how are we going to do this? We're going to do this by what I call success by subtraction. We're going to remove the blocks and the limitations so the natural self-belief rises up because within you, the answers are already there. Everything you seek is already within you, but it's sometimes covered, oftentimes, every time, covered between the layers of self-doubt and fear. So we're going to remove fear because fear has many different disguises. Fear cosplays as different things. And just like in this week's episode about self-belief, we are going to remove the two primary factors that's holding people back from believing in themselves in 2026. And that is vanity and perfection. Vanity and perfection. This is why becoming a student and not a follower is very important. Because when you're a follower, you are just observing somebody. And when you're observing anybody as a follower, you're never quite seeing the faults. You're never really seeing the beginning of their journey. Go to social media right now. Go to whether you're a fan of Twitter, whether you're a fan of Instagram, whether you're a fan of TikTok. Look at your screen time if you already don't know this answer and look at the app you spend the most time in daily. And that's where you start. Now, go to your favorite influencer. It doesn't matter if they're a positive or negative influencer. We'll discuss that duality some other time. But look at your favorite influencer and try to go back to their very first video. Go ahead and try to do it, and you will quickly discover that it is very hard to do because the way that Instagram and TikTok and these other social media platforms that have risen to prominence in the last 10 years, it's very hard to go back and see the beginning of somebody's journey. Typically, your perspective of their journey comes from whenever you found them. So if you found somebody when they were already at 1 million followers, already at 500,000 followers, you didn't quite see the beginning of the journey. You didn't see where they started out awkward, where they started out maybe not in the best physical appearance yet. Maybe they didn't really nail down their verbiage, their cadence, their charisma. They were just starting with pure belief in whatever they wanted to give value to in the world, whatever piece of content that they put out there. Even those who are entrepreneurs, you might see when they have already scaled their business to millions of dollars of profit. But were you there in the beginning when they were struggling to figure it out? When all they had was self-belief. And that's where vanity and perfection come in. Because vanity and perfection will make you think that wherever you found the people that inspire you, you have to start at that level. That's the perfectionist angle. That's the vanity angle. I want to be like my favorite entrepreneur. I want to be like my favorite entertainer. Whatever it is, because whatever desire that you have to be, nobody can tell you that you can't be that because you're no different from the person that you admire. They have the same skill set as you. They have the ability to think, the ability to feel, and the ability to act. And those three pillars are the three pillars of manifestation. But it's hard to see that if you can't see the beginning. And social media does a very good job at doing that. YouTube is a little bit different. That's where I play the most. YouTube is very easy. It just takes 2 clicks. Go to the video tab, go to the oldest video, and you see the beginning of somebody's journey, even mine. You'll see where the talking points weren't quite aligned yet, that the flow was a little bit awkward, a little bit static, a little bit stiff. But with time and repetition and consistency comes perfection. And that's the thing about perfection. Vanity is what I just described, that we have this egotistic desire to start at the same level as our heroes and heroines. But perfection comes in with not wanting to make the mistakes that they made. And that's where becoming a student is more important than being a follower, because the person that is a student is already on the pathway to being a leader. And some people are quietly suffering with that very aspect of vanity, whereas they don't want to be looked at as a student. But like I said, the best leaders were once the best students. So yeah, social media doesn't really show the simple beginnings, but I urge you, go follow somebody that you want to imitate, somebody that you want to imitate their success, and look at how they started. And that will take away a lot of the fear that keeps you from starting, that keeps you from believing in yourself. Because everybody started at zero. Everybody started at zero. Everybody started at 0 followers. Everybody started at $0. Some people even started in the negatives, started in debt. But it's the consistency and the discipline to stick with it that always reaches the harvest of success. So here's my formula for success that I'm going to give you this week on this episode of our beautiful, magnificent podcast. This is what I'm going to tell you. First, I want you to study your muses, whoever it is, in business, in love and relationships. If you know a person who has a wonderful relationship, lots of great chemistry, they don't mind showing the vulnerability of the relationship along with the success. If you have a person you aspire in wealth and business, or if you have somebody that you like their body, you like their fitness, and you want to achieve the same physique, study them. Don't just follow them. Don't just consume their content. The difference is when you consume and do nothing, that's all you're doing is consuming. But when you consume and you take action, now you're a student of them. And you will pick up the same thing that they have picked up. Because ultimately, you have to be consistent with what you learn. Put it to work, put it to the test in your own life, and be consistent with it. And here's your formula for discipline. Let's discuss the formula of success versus the formula of failure. Very simple process. Look at it like this and keep it in your back pocket every day of your life. The formula for failure is discipline to make the same mistakes every day. The formula for failure is the discipline to make the same mistakes every day. Now, very simple. The duality of it all is very simple. The formula for success is just a few simple disciplines every day. So if you are working on something, if you are working on your wealth, if you're working on your business, or if you're working on some form of personal development where you're trying to break through a ceiling of your identity, of your self-concept, what are you doing every day that actually benefits that process? Are you on social media a little too much? Because typically, unless you're creating the content, that's not in alignment with your goals. That's having the discipline to fail. Instead of social media, crack open a book in the area that you want to achieve in. It's just swapping things. It's not creating some persona out of nowhere. It's making a decision and sticking to that decision every day. So every day, ask yourself, have I did something towards my goals? Whether it's in some type of internal change, whether it's some type of emotional control, whether it's some type of action you take every day. Simply getting started is enough to uproot the fear and the limiting beliefs. Getting started and staying consistent. And remember that formula. Failure is just a discipline to make the same mistakes every day. And success is just a few simple disciplines in the right area, in the right direction every single day. And it's a compounding interest thing. The more good things you do in that area, the more good things come to you. That's essentially what manifestation is. You can move mountains with that. And you will. You are neither here nor there. Thank you for sharing your time and space with me.